So before the video, I just want to say, because I know that it can be very hard to tell these days, but this is a joke, okay? Ahoy hoy, I'm Planet Walk, and recently I've seen quite a few people attempt to debunk things that they don't really understand and shouldn't even be attempting to debunk the thing that they're talking about. So I thought, why don't I, a high IQ skeptic with a gazillion tabs open, debunk a thing that I'm not really qualified to debunk? So today, I am going to be attempting to debunk the entirety of mathematics. So I should probably mention all my qualifications, although I do get a new one every 10 minutes, so I'll just list the most important ones. So, I have a Bachelor of IT, I have a Diploma in Game Development, I have a Graduate Diploma in Audio Production, I have a PhD in Fluorophism and a PhD in Modified Snipers. I also have a Masters of Magnetology, a BS in BS, I have a horoscope in astrology, I have a PhD in meth, I am a flat earth certified expert, and I have 200 hours in Final Fantasy X. So with all those qualifications, I think I am ready to debunk mathematics, because magnet, keep the magnet for later. Anyway, what is 1 plus 1? Most people who I ask this question to will say it's 2 or window. But they're wrong. Have you not been watching my videos? It's clearly 1. So the next question is, what is 1 plus 2? And there is a reason why I'm asking all these questions, so don't worry. Now, most people will say it's clearly 3. No, it is clearly 2. Now, my next question is, what is 2 plus 2? And this is where people go, I don't know, 2, I guess? No, it's 1. 1 plus 1 only equals 1 because there's one thing there. 1 plus 2 equals 2 because it's 2 things. 2 plus 2 equals 1 because it's only one thing. So now that we know this, we can figure out that 1 plus 2 plus 4 equals 1, 2, 3. And we can figure out that 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 equals 1, 2, 3, 4. And we can figure out that 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 8 equals 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I can't count that high, so it doesn't exist. So as you can see, I have just debunked the mainstream narrative of addition. I have destroyed the foundation of math. We now need to stop schools from indoctrinating children into believing that 1 plus 1 equals 2 without any evidence. So now let's debunk subtraction. I have 3 magnets here. Now let's say I subtracted 5 magnets. How many magnets would I be left with? Well, according to mainstream math, I'd be left with -2 magnets.
Oops.
Can you imagine me having negative magnets? That's ludicrous. You can't have a negative magnet. So magnets debunks subtraction. And you know what this means, right? This also means that magnets, they debunk negative numbers. So now for multiplication. As discussed earlier, you can only have one of a number. So 2 times 3 being 2 3s, you can't have 2 3s. You can only have 1 3. So multiplication has just been debunked. Now as for division, 1 divided by 1 equals 1 because there is a 1 in 1. 2 divided by 2 equals 2 because there's a 2 in 2. But 2 divided by 1, well, there are no 1s in 2, so that would equal... Hold on, what would that equal? Now all the sheeple will probably be saying, well, that would be 0, of course, but I'm sorry to tell you, 0 isn't real. 0 is just a number that was made up by mathematicians in order to indoctrinate the population. You see, ancient cultures who were a lot smarter than we are today did not have the number 0, because 0 does not exist. And they were very smart and got on perfectly fine without the number 0. So if they can do it, we can too. So next I want to dive into debunking geometry. And this field is just completely wrong because it says that Australia is a place. We all know that Australia doesn't exist. It also says that New Zealand is a place, and New Zealand doesn't exist either. It also says that Antarctica is hanging off the bottom of the Earth when we all know that it's actually just an ice wall around the Earth. And the United States, we all know that that's actually half the size that geometry says that it's supposed to be. So I think that's sufficient to debunk geometry. Now let's debunk geology. So let's start with triangles, because there's a lot here to debunk. First, we're told that the interior angles of a triangle add up to 180. But there's only 3 angles in a triangle. It's literally called triangle, meaning 3 angles. So it should be 3. The next thing is the Pythagorean theorem, and oh boy is there so much wrong with this. Let's start with the fact that it says a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Why is it a squared plus b squared equals c squared? We're not working with squares, we're working with triangles, ya dummies! It should really be a triangled plus b triangled equals c triangled, but they use c squared because they want the hypotenuse to equal the speed of light. They're so desperate to validate Einstein that they put c squared from E equals mc squared everywhere, even in places where it doesn't belong. But E equals mc squared is nonsense anyway, because it says that E, estrogen, is equal to M, magnets, travelling at the speed of light. Magnets have nothing to do with estrogen, and they certainly don't travel at the speed of light. This magnet isn't travelling at the speed of light. You see, magnets just completely debunk Einstein, maths, the whole shebang, because magnets. Another thing is that we say that 2 squared is 2 to the power of 2, but I'm sorry to inform you, but a square has 4 sides. But even worse than that, we say that 2 cubed is 2 to the power of 3, when a cube has 6 faces. But another thing I haven't really talked about is the fact that 2D shapes don't actually exist, because the world is 3D, not 2D. So why are we using so many 2D shapes? And the last thing on the subject of geology that I want to talk about, and this is something that all the mathematicians and all the scientists will deny, is that half of a dome is a sphere. You know, all the mathematicians will deny this. All the scientists will deny this. These guys are so dumb if they can't figure this out. I managed to figure it out, so I must be smarter than them. So the next part I'm going to debunk, let's go with the golden ratio. Numbers don't have colours. Stop pretending like they do. It isn't golden, it's just a number. So the last thing that I'll debunk for this video, I could go on for ages, but I don't think the mathematicians will be able to handle if I go on for ages. The last thing that I want to talk about is imaginary numbers. Now the mathematician priests will say that imaginary numbers are what you get if you try and find the square root of a negative number. Oh, that actually reminds me, squares don't have roots, they're not trees. So the obvious thing about imaginary numbers is, well, negative numbers are imaginary. So obviously the square root of imaginary numbers is also going to be imaginary, isn't it? Now obviously the pseudoscience mathematicians are trying to push imaginary numbers to hide the fact that negative numbers are the real imaginary numbers. Now I used to think that when it came to imaginary numbers, that was it.
Boy was I wrong.
As luck would have it, it turns out that these imaginary numbers are part of these numbers that are called complex numbers. So first they invented imaginary numbers, and then they invented complex numbers, which need imaginary numbers to exist. Dear oh dear. But the real thing that debunks complex numbers are magnets. Because, you see, Mother Nature is simple, not complex. You see, magnets are simply caused by the toroidal nature of dielectricity, which gives rise to gravity, which also gives rise to the toroidal nature of the magnetic field. Counterspace is crucial in this because counterspace is simply perturbations in the ether, which, you know, light makes the ether counterspace. Magnet, counterspace, magnet, 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 magnet.
Oops.